Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for September 8th, 2025. There is a new TikTok channel that highlights some late-night activities at BYU. Although it appears to be someone relieving themselves in various locations on the Brigham Young University Provo campus, I am not sure exactly what is actually happening here. My favorite part, though, is this comment by City of Provo that says, "Don't think for a second we don't see you." And Mr. Sparkle 80 replied with, "Don't be mad, that cougar is getting soaked." Now let's talk Russell Nelson's birthday week. The current prophet of the Mormon Church, Russell M. Nelson, will be turning 101 tomorrow, September 9th, and LDS social media has been celebrating with some mistakes. Let's hear from Nemo the Mormon for those details.
Prepare yourselves for a week of hashtag Russell M. Nelson 101, a media campaign around the prophet's birthday, which was kicked off in fine form by Ronald A. Rasband and Dan H. Oakes, who were apparently so keen to celebrate our beloved prophet's birthday that they both said today was Russell M. Nelson's birthday, when in fact it isn't for another 7 days at the time of recording. This was particularly amusing given how Dan H. Oakes' post talked about him and Nelson being friends of some 41 years. Now these posts have been edited to correct those claims, and it was probably just a simple mistake.
Now let's go to a post from an LDS women's support group on Facebook for some information. It says, Sunday, August 31st, each of the 12 apostles and each of the members of the First Presidency released a new short video, each respectively on their own new official YouTube channel. I will share a link to each of these at the end of my post. Also, for those with primary-aged children or grandchildren, a new friend-to-friend broadcast in which Elder Kieran will be available 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, Saturday, September 6th, both on the church website and on YouTube. Low-key missionary opportunity. Subscribing to each channel will encourage the YouTube algorithm, recommend more videos like these to you, and also to others. New channels and videos that get a lot of subscribers early on are more likely to be recommended to others. Comments and likes on new videos also help, especially in the first days after uploading. Spread the word. Just for fun, let's explore the highlighted video on Russell's new YouTube channel and compare it with an earlier statement that he made.
Vulgarity, fault-finding, and evil speaking of others are all too common.
Lazy learners and lax disciples.
Too many pundits, politicians, entertainers, and other influencers throw insults constantly.
Lazy learners and lax disciples.
I am greatly concerned that so many people seem to believe that it is completely acceptable to condemn.
Lazy learners and lax disciples.
Malign.
Lazy learners.
And vilify anyone who does not agree with them.
And lax disciples.
Anger never persuades.
Lazy learners and lax disciples.
Hostility builds no one.
Lazy learners and lax disciples.
Contention never leads to inspired solutions.
Lazy learners and lax disciples.
One of the easiest ways to identify a true follower of Jesus Christ is how compassionately that person treats other people.
Next, an update on the situation in Brazil with the abusive mission president. I reported on this last week. The link to that video will be in the show notes. I found a Reddit post that gives more information. When the letter detailing the abuse was published at Exponent 2, they left out the name of the mission area and the mission president. The Reddit post says, though, that the mission is the Florianopolis, Brazil mission, and the mission president is President Rogerio Finholdt. A church news article from February 10th of 2023 says the following about President Rogerio. Rogerio Finholdt, 53, 3 children, Guarujá Ward, Porto Alegre, Brazil, South Stake, Brazil, Florianopolis Mission. Brother Finholdt is a mission presidency counselor and former stake president, stake executive secretary, high counselor, bishop, temple and family history consultant, and missionary in the Brazil Rio de Janeiro mission. He was born in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Let's hope with his name and mission out there that the church decides to actually do something about how he's been treating the missionaries in his care. While I was looking into him, I also found an interesting Instagram page about LDS missionaries. It's called LDS Missionary Wellness Stories and has the following description. We are returned missionaries sharing experiences with wellness on the mission, asking the LDS Church to improve missionary wellness. Let's read just one of the stories posted. My mental health suffered severely on my mission. I was paired with a trainee for every transfer after I finished training, up until I went home after serving for 9 months. I lost so much weight due to difficulty eating from so much stress. My clothes became too big for me, even though they fit perfectly before I left. You could see the bones in my wrists and my ribs began to show. I wasn't anorexic, but I was getting there. I did receive access to healthcare, and I had phone calls from the mission nurse and therapist fairly regularly. When I got my last trainee, I was so exhausted all the time I could barely get out of bed. I was with her for 2 weeks before one of her parents posted on the Parent Mission Facebook page about me. The comments were filled with other parents making comments about how I was a bad missionary and that I needed to shape up. I heard about this from an email sent to me from a previous companion who had already gone home. I was so hurt and upset and tired of hearing I wasn't doing enough when I was already giving all I could give and my body was paying for it. After getting this news, I went to the bathroom and dry heaved for a little while. I hadn't been able to stomach anything that day anyways, so my body had nothing to expel. We called the mission president and informed him what happened, and I was emergency transferred. I went home 2 weeks later. I never told my companion what her parents did. I have extreme resentment against missions and missionaries. Luckily, I don't have any lasting physical damage that I know of, but those wounds will always be there. Every time I hear about one of my cousins leaving on a mission, I cringe. I hope and pray their experience isn't like mine. What I have shared here is just a small part of how awful and mentally taxing my mission experience was. I no longer attend church and have no interest in ever returning. Before I left for my mission, I already had a distrust in leadership. When I came home, I distrusted leadership even more. I felt let down by many of my leaders. My mission president knew I was sick. Why did he keep giving me new missionaries? I couldn't handle being in charge anymore. Let's explore why the mission president may have acted that way. Mission presidents are often under immense pressure from the institutional church to meet the needs of the work. In the system, an experienced missionary who has finished training is considered a valuable resource. The institutional logic often dictates that the most experienced missionaries must be used as trainers for new ones, regardless of their personal struggles. The mission's numerical goals, baptisms, and keeping missionaries in the field may have been prioritized over individual mental and physical health. Missionary culture has historically been one of toughing it out. A mission president, having likely served their own mission and being conditioned by this same culture, may have a blind spot to severe mental health distress. They may have viewed the struggles as a test of faith that the missionary was meant to overcome through sheer spiritual discipline. In this mindset, keeping the missionary in the field with new missionaries might have been seen as a way for them to push through and find strength, even if it was causing significant harm. And as always, mission presidents are volunteers and are rarely mental health professionals. While they may have a deep desire to help, they often lack the training to recognize severe mental distress. The system they operate in, the Mormon Church, is often binary. A missionary is either fit to serve or must be sent home. There may be no clear protocol or option for a missionary who needs a less stressful role or a break without being sent home. This institutional rigidity can lead to a tragic inability to respond appropriately to complex health crises. Now let's look at a post from an LDS woman in an energy healers group. She said, "Does anyone know of any sessions or anything to address same-sex attraction? That has been a struggle of mine. Years ago, my mom went to an energy healer in behalf of me, and supposedly one of my ancestors struggled with that, and in my pre-earth life, asked if I could take it on and overcome it for her. I've chosen to not give in to those feelings, and am married to the best husband I could ever ask for, before and have children and have been able to manage it pretty well. However, the feelings still exist at times, and it can get really annoying. And it can pop up in my dreams too as well. I'm not sure if there's anything else I could do or any suggestions on what else I could do. The belief that a core part of who a person is, their natural attraction, is a flaw to be overcome, sets up an internal war. The woman is being told to reject a fundamental part of her identity. This constant internal battle can lead to profound feelings of shame, guilt, and self-hatred. The post highlights a particularly damaging aspect of the Mormon belief system. Even when a person does everything right, marries, has children, doesn't give in, they are still haunted by the feelings. This creates a no-win situation. The feelings are framed as a spiritual failing, so even success is accompanied by a persistent feeling of being fundamentally broken or not good enough. This can lead to hopelessness, depression, and a sense of isolation. I sincerely hope that woman can learn to accept who she is without the church's damaging narrative about queerness getting in the way. Now let's discuss an article from WSJ.com. When Madeline Woodward discovered ex-Mormon influencers on social media, it was her first glimpse of people finding joy after leaving the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Woodward, a descendant of church pioneers, had struggled for years to reconcile her faith with church policies she viewed as anti-gay, discriminatory, and troubling, like the polygamy of Mormon founder Joseph Smith. After watching posts on TikTok and Instagram known as #ExMoContent, she realized she wasn't alone. In April, she requested that her records be removed from church member rolls. Woodward, whose intense dedication to her faith previously led classmates to call her Mormon Maddie, had officially severed ties with the church. Once among the world's fastest-growing religions, Mormonism is facing a 21st century reckoning, driven by social media influencers, and the church is racing to counter them. And my friends, this is why I do what I do. No one needs to feel alone when leaving the Mormon church. Not anymore. I have a friend who left 10 plus years before I did, and talking to her about how hard it was pre-internet makes me even more grateful for those who brave social media and talk about their experiences in the Mormon church. Back to the article. In video after video, an army of #ExMo creators emphasize controversial aspects of LDS history, such as death oaths to protect temple secrets or a regulatory fine the church paid in 2023 for hiding the scale of its wealth. They question some of the Book of Mormon's claims, pointing to a lack of archaeological evidence, dissect leaders' efforts to modernize, and share snapshots of the happier lives they find outside the church. Creators gave me the final boost to take my name off the list, Woodward said. This next paragraph makes me wonder how other religions fare on social media. I do follow some ex-Jehovah's Witness creators and have perused the ex-Catholic subreddit before, but of course I am more aware of ex-Mormon content. The article goes on to say, Mormonism is particularly vulnerable to social media backlash. Organized in 1830, it's a relatively new religion, with documents detailing the peccadillos of its early leaders that skeptics scrutinize. Mormon leaders manage their flock with a hierarchical and centralized style, rooted in conservative practices that have repelled some younger members. And former members who leave the church say they face judgment from others in their tight-knit communities for their decision. Honestly, I talk about Mormonism because of the pain and trauma that it inflicts on people. If Joseph had been a good person, there wouldn't be so much scandal to talk about. If the Mormon church didn't hide hundreds of billions of dollars and instead actually helped the poor and needy, having paid tithing wouldn't seem like such a big deal. Back to the article. The church declined to comment. The church's fight for relevance on social media comes as it battles a broader membership crisis. After decades of expanding its American base by 4% a year, official church rolls are now growing less than 1% annually in the U.S. globally. Church growth is bolstered by converts abroad, especially in Africa. The portion of people in the U.S. who identify as Mormon has almost halved from the 1.8% they represented in 2012, according to the Cooperative Elections Study, a survey of more than 50,000 Americans. Justin Turman, a former member who conducts church attendance surveys, has found that approximately 21% of the 17.5 million official members worldwide are actively involved in the church. Of course, the church doesn't want to talk about its detractors and its failing membership stats. The article then says, to counter the Exmo narratives, teams of employees, pastoral officials at its Utah headquarters, and even a paid ad agency are organizing a slate of pro-church influencers. They highlight positive perspectives on the Book of Mormon and encourage viewers to meet with missionaries. That is not really what they do. They start social media accounts that look like mainstream Christian churches and deceive people into attending before they know it's the Mormons they are talking to. The article continues, yet negative videos about the church vastly outnumber positive ones on social media, according to people familiar with the institution's tallies of the content. Recent polling data of non-members studied by the church found that cult was the most common word people associated with the church, they said. Keep up the good work, former Mormons. Back to the article. Leaders increasingly post short-form video content on the church's social media accounts, featuring a variety of members and faith stories and Mormon apostles. It has also encouraged its tens of thousands of missionaries to post pro-church content. There are so many things that are being blasted into your feed the minute the algorithm detects you're a Latter-day Saint, and it's all negative, said Jasmine Rapoli, who until recently worked for an organization with funding from the church in one video. Why is the truth constantly called negative? I'm learning to dislike that word more and more. People use it to describe feelings. Y'all, feelings are not negative or positive. They are feelings. The actions or reactions to them may be categorized that way, I guess, but the feelings themselves should not be. Now, telling the truth about lies or abuse is also negative? No, I would call it healing, real, truth-telling. Validating. Back to the article. If the only place you are getting information about the faith is from people who have left it, chances are you are probably not seeing a lot of reasons people choose to join and stay in the church, Snell said. Here is the thing though. If I am going to spend a lot of time and money on something, I want to first make sure it is worth the effort. And to do that, I don't only look at the 5-star reviews, but also the 1-star reviews. I want to hear what went well and what needs changing. And if the 1-star reviews use words like abuse, trauma, indoctrination, or cult, I'm going to be leery for sure. After the Wall Street Journal article came out, Sarah Jane Weaver, an editor for the Deseret News, wrote an article with this title, The Wall Street Journal Reported a Latter-day Saint 21st Century Reckoning. That's not what I see. She started out by detailing 2019 LDS gatherings in Florida, Tonga, and Guatemala, and then pointing out that that same year, Pew Research Center's 2019 Religious Landscape Study showed that Christianity in the United States was in decline. But in the years since, between 2019 and 2024, Pew has seen a new trend emerge. The Christian share of the adult population has been relatively stable, hovering between 60% and 64%. Notice there that she points out Christian adults and cites a study not specific to Latter-day Saints. Sarah then says, and as I could have predicted in 2019 after watching Latter-day Saints gather in spite of the elements, members of the Church of Jesus Christ are one of the most devout religious groups in the country, with significantly higher rates of religious participation and daily prayer than the national average. According to a Pew study published in February 2025, 73% of Latter-day Saints in the United States pray daily. This study does not show how many Latter-day Saints are actually active. It just says that Latter-day Saints pray a lot. The daily prayer thing is hammered by LDS prophets, so there is no surprise there. None of her points so far counter what the Washington Journal said. She has simply managed to point out that some Mormons are still devout, which we already know. She then says, that is why I was stunned to read a Wall Street Journal article about Exmo influencers who are mounting a TikTok war against the faith. The article noted that the Church of Jesus Christ is facing a 21st century reckoning driven by social media. With only passing reference to any positive counterpoints, this narrative amplifies and exaggerates the influence of self-proclaimed Exmo influencers who dedicate full-time energies to assailing faith online. Once again, I'm going to have to point out that, for at least me, I do not consider myself someone who is assailing faith. I personally still have faith, and I think that if people have faith that is chosen with informed consent and it brings them joy, that's amazing. I would probably say that my goal is to share news, detail how my experiences compare to what is going on in the world, and then discuss how Mormonism interacts with all of that. Sarah goes on to say, this does impact the faith of some who take these influencers to be credible and honest sources of information. Yet the truth of what's taking place is actually much more complex. Simply said, while the Church of Jesus Christ, like all faith traditions, is grappling to engage the rising generations, Latter-day Saint faithful are encouraged by so much that is happening today. I would love to know exactly why she does not think that Exmo influencers are credible and honest sources of information. I would legitimately love to sit down and ask her that question and just listen to her answer. She again then points out how the Latter-day Saint faithful are feeling encouraged, which is true, while the points in the Washington Journal news article are also true. She then says, for example, rebutting the popular narrative about young adults losing faith, nearly 1 million students enrolled in Latter-day Saint colleges and universities and in religious instruction at the churches, seminaries, and institutes in 2024. Okay, not all those students are youth, and not all of those students are active or faithful members, so that really does not help her case. She then talks about how there are more than 80,000 missionaries and mentions the claim that from July 1st of 2024 through June 30th, convert baptisms were the highest of any 12-month period in church history. If you want to know why that is likely not true, you can watch my video from July 25th that explains. Sarah then says, this year marked the 100th anniversary of the church in South America, where there were no Latter-day Saints in 1924, the year President Nelson was born. Today, the church has nearly 4.4 million Latter-day Saints currently residing across the 12 South American nations and 1 territory. Math time, the church claims 4,392,463 members in South America, divided up into 5,599 congregations, meaning that each of those congregations should have roughly 784 people attending each week. We all know that is not happening weekly in even one of those congregations. She then says, in Guatemala, the nation where members sat in the hot sun for hours before a historic meeting, the church has almost 300,000 members. Math again. The church membership in Guatemala is claimed to be 292,639 members in 437 congregations, meaning 669 people would need to be showing up each week at church. Again, that is not happening. She then says, and Tonga, where the members endured heavy rain to receive religious instruction, has the largest number of Latter-day Saints per capita of any nation in the world. The church claims 68,609 members in 175 congregations, meaning 392 people per congregation, 32 of which are branches. Still not happening. Sarah finishes by saying this: days before the Wall Street Journal article was published, thousands of young Latter-day Saints again stood in long lines, this time to gather for a 3-day conference in Salt Lake City. The conference was reminiscent of gatherings in Florida, Tonga, and Guatemala just 6 years ago, as well as hundreds of thousands more Latter-day Saint gatherings supported by faithful members each year across the world. Event co-chair James Fetzer said the conference offered young people the chance to find what they need, whether it's spiritually, socially, physically, or even economically. We have an opportunity to learn how to be strong, capable, powerful individuals and faithful members, disciples of Jesus Christ, all at the same time, and to do it together, he said. His words, coupled with the actions of faithful Latter-day Saints across the globe, do not feel like a 21st century reckoning to me. And that is okay if she feels that way. It does not change the effect that social media is having on the Mormon Church and its dodgy doctrines. And last up today, let's go to this quote that says, "What is wrong with inciting intense dislike of a religion if the activities or teachings of that religion are so outrageous, irrational, or abusive of human rights that they deserve to be intensely disliked?" And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.